I love the Yeti microphone, but sometimes you hit mute and then you think you unmute it and it doesn't unmute. And I just spent about 15 or 20 minutes doing some amazing commentary, super insightful. None of it got recorded. So, it makes me mad. So, what I was saying of going over budget in terms of script pages is that often, for me at least, when I get into the first part of Act Two, the story usually broadens out because people are going here, people are going there. In this case, we've got Holly going one direction, we've got Lexi and Larry and Rachel going in another direction, and then we've got the story of Abby and Gary and kind of Paul as the side. So we've got three parts of the story, and because of that, I feel like sometimes between the early part of Act Two really gets out of control. Not out of control, but I often find I've got to go back and cut because it's just so easy to write dialogue, especially when you've got three different stories and you're trying to advance together yet separately, if that makes sense. So now Holly has gotten her wish in that Paul has contacted someone who in turn has contacted the pilot. Holly doesn't know for sure what's going on. Obviously, she probably thinks that it's not good, and that's why she's got her nervous energy. Still mad at myself for muting the mic because I did say some really amazing things. Okay. So this whole part obviously has got to be cut out because that was from before. They're not talking. See, suddenly, I feel like I'm just into Act 2 and I'm up to page 40 already. Now I'm going back. I don't know what made me think of this, but I realized that I maybe had written the little girl's name differently, or I had called her Kendra, and I said, well, that would be confusing. Maybe because I'd read a script recently where something like that happened. So I went back and made her a generic girl. So now I'm just basically going through and fixing that up. Feel free to skip ahead if you don't care about missing this commentary. Hence, think I'll keep that? No. All right, so a little cleanup, and it's interesting what will get your thoughts on something. Here I was on page 40, and something I'd have to play this in real time so I could have time to remember what I was thinking, but obviously something clicked and I realized I need to fix that. Yeah, I don't love that dialogue. How about you? If you choose to return, if you decide, if I keep that line of dialogue, I need to change that to if you decide, because choose is, it's a fine word, don't get me wrong, but I don't think she would talk like that. All right. Back to the present. Not the virgin present, which I call the first time through the script, because this is at least my second time, if not third. But, all right, so I'm cutting all that, which is good, because I'm up to page 40 already, and it feels like Act 2 has just begun. And I plan to make this about 110 pages. Well, I first was thinking maybe 100, but then I said, haha, Jack, what's the last time you wrote a 100-page script? So now I'm shooting for 110, hopefully a little less. Having said that, the three movies I've made of my own, with my own scripts, I feel like that they were all about 100 minutes, give or take. One was a little less. But I feel like their scripts were like in the low 100s, 106, and it's a page a minute, so there you go. I did delete a couple scenes now that I think about it. Where are we? Okay. We'll talk soon. Okay, so I got off on a tangent there. Rachel in the helicopter, we've got a male voice there. We don't know for sure who he is. I think I may have mentioned this the first time through. And so I was wondering, do I say who he is in his header, in his slug line, whatever, even though the audience hasn't met him yet? So I figured no. So I just leave it at male voice. I asked on a screenwriting website, or actually on the Facebook page, I think, of zoetrope or screenwriting. Okay. So this is introducing the idea that Gary is still, he's not Mr. Brave. You can tell there because almost every line of dialogue you can tell comes from a place of worry, doubt, fear, anxiety, etc. And why do they have to go back to the airport? Because they've reassigned her SUV already. Maybe a little too convenient. Maybe that needs to be reworked. I guess she could be driven, but no, she has to go to the airport because there's no one else there. But maybe when Paul landed, he's got her SUV? No, I don't think so. But anyways, it's a reason to get them back to the airport. End that scene. Come on. On their shared look. I may have mentioned before, I don't know if on or off is a better way to end that. Airfield. What's smaller? Comment, share, like, subscribe. An airfield or an airstrip? I think probably an airstrip because an airfield feels bigger to me. But this is like literally grass. All right. Now, the reason I had Gary say that is it's alluding back to the fact that she drives super fast and he doesn't want her to drive his car super fast. I think later on I realized that line is kind of stupid or not stupid, just not needed. It takes takes the story in a place where it doesn't need to go. All right, so later is a good slug line because it can save you time from writing and it implies maybe seconds. Usually for me, it's like 30 seconds to 2 minutes have passed. It's not like 3 hours or continuous. So then the first thing Holly does, of course, is ask for the keys. So that was kind of the payoff, and it's not really a joke, but I don't know that I am going to keep that. Holly's talking to Paul. All right, here's some big information. I probably should say that Holly reacts somehow, but again, the actress is going to know. So Holly is hearing from Paul that we don't know for sure, but based on that, you have a heading. You got a heading. We assume that someone has found out that there's a helicopter, there's an airplane that's been spotted, and maybe it's got the kids and Rachel. I need to think about that a little. I don't know if helicopters have to file flight plans. Well, obviously, if you're a crime boss or whatever, you don't have to. So I think it would make sense that maybe someone, literally, it could have been someone on the ground looked up and saw a helicopter and just thought, hey, maybe that's them. So that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. All right, so Holly is now quizzing the pilot about how much fuel they have left, and the pilot's like, oh my gosh, what the heck? And then Fort Smith. So here's a little discussion about using real cities versus fictitious ones. If you use a real city like Dallas, everyone's going to know how big it is and where it is and all that stuff. If you use Gotham City or something like that, then people know what it is. Obviously, you're not going to use Gotham, but so Fort Smith is a real city. How many of you know where Fort Smith is? Is it in Arkansas? Yes, it is. It's on kind of the southwest border. So I was trying to figure out how far away I wanted them to fly, and also is Fort Smith big enough to support the action that's going to take place there. Spoiler alert, that may change later because I may have had to cheat a little, geographically speaking. All right. I'm just catching up here. So now Paul is alone. Originally, he and Holly were in there, as I recall. So he's telling Holly that he's not going to be joining her. All right, now this is going to get interesting, and you'll see why. So he's talking to Holly. Holly is at the airfield, whatever, with Lexi. No, with Gary and Abby. But before we get there, I'm introducing the idea that there's an FBI in charge, and Holly's wondering who basically is my boss, are you or him? And Paul sort of delays the response with his dialogue there. We'll have that settled by the time you land. All right. And then Holly's wondering out loud what's going to happen to the kids. As she says, Holly obviously is not going to take them with her. Or is she? Because the audience knows, no spoiler alert here, that obviously the kids have got to stay involved. So now in my head and on the paper, cyber paper, e-paper, I'm trying to figure out what would justify her taking them with her. And so would it be Abby making an argument for them to go? Would Gary want to go, showing his relative cowardness? And then I was also thinking, what's the word? Pursuant to Holly's question at the bottom of 44. What'd they call their parents? And I thought about that a fair amount. They're 19 and 20. They feel like they're pretty grown up. They wouldn't necessarily, if you were 12 or 13, of course you wouldn't be on this weekend. But if you were 16 even, maybe you would. But I figured they probably wouldn't. And how would that play into anything? Because I didn't want to, bring the parents and have them call and say, you get home right away, or I'm calling the police or something. So I'm not sure that I kept this dialogue, but I think it makes sense for her to say that. And basically she's not commanding, but telling them to go home. Abby wants no part of it. And so Abby is basically saying, look, I'm either going to stay here with Paul until I know what's going on, or I'm going with you. Come on. Must have fallen asleep. No, I probably got a drink of water. All right. So Abby is being a little demanding here, and I don't know that she would really talk like that. So now Gary's introducing the idea that, obviously being who they are, they're not going to strap on a 6-shooter and go save the day or anything. So what does it matter if they go home and do nothing, or stay here, do nothing, frankly, go with Holly and do nothing? But if they go with Holly, they're going to be closer to the danger, and he's probably not super keen on that. Will he grow a pair? Will Abby shame him into it? And then boom, Abby's like, Jesus, you are scared. So now Gary is having a little bit of a meltdown and kind of coming clean on what he did/didn't do. What? You're both over 18. Oh, yeah. So, yeah, I think I can that whole approach. All right, so now that Abby has kind of been insistent, Holly is... I'm not going to tell you her motivation for doing this. See if you can guess. I'd be very interested. Leave a comment, subscribe, like. No. I'd be very interested to see, because I never say what she's thinking, and maybe this is totally, no one would guess it, or maybe they'd guess it in a second. It would be very interesting to know if the audience is going to say, oh my gosh, she would never ask them or invite them to come. So she's doing it. I'm not going to tell you why, but she is giving them the offer. very strict conditions. Basically, her plan is to take him up there, stick him in a hotel room, and nothing is going to happen to him. And so Abby, of course, is agreeing because she really wants to go. And so Holly looks at Gary because, Gary, what's he going to do? All right, so now she tells the kids not to say anything, and she tells Paul a lie. I'm not sure if that dialogue will stick in the script. I definitely, it's definitely, when she says definitely the smart decision, she's parroting what Paul has told her. And I don't know, I obviously liked it when I wrote it. I don't like it reading it back. We'll see if it sticks. Ooh, I saved some more. Let's see. All right, so thank you so much. So now we've set up that they are going with her. I'm looking at page 47, knowing I've got about 6-7 pages till the middle of the script. Something big has got to happen. A false victory or false defeat, says Blake. Ooh, look at all that stuff I get to cut. So I'm just reading because they were in the plane, but not an emotional nod. Does that make sense to you guys? The emotional, appreciative nod when she says we're going to get him back, and he's like, "Thanks for the confidence." All right, so we're back in the trampoline park. Maybe in Fort Smith, maybe not. And again, I've written this, I'm rewriting it. So if you've been watching the series, you know what's going on. So I'm not going to make too much commentary. Obviously, changing some dialogue here. Let's see if it's anything substantial. Larry, always kind of the optimist and the light. Of the 3-4 kids, he's definitely the most lighthearted, easygoing. I'd say Gary is probably the most intense. Although Lexi's pretty matter-of-factly logical, and Abby is, I have to think how I classify her. It's not that she doesn't have a point of view. I'm just at a loss because I'm reading this scene and she's not in it. And then I'm thinking through the logic of, where Rachel would be and what they would assume, being that she's not there. Is she in on it? Did they hold her somewhere separate? Is she dead or whatever? All right, so now Lexi is going to spill a few beans, which again, I think I've already written this, or is this new? Anyways, Lexi is this going to be a tell-all expose of the Salerno family and everything that Larry doesn't know? And she could say, Larry, sit down, I've got to tell you a lot of things. And then we could see everything she tells him, which would be boring and stupid, or we could cut away because the audience already knows it, or maybe he would infer some stuff, and that might make it a little more interesting. And so now that he's heard the Salernos and he's like, oh, holy crap. And he realizes, for the first time that they're in the middle of some deep doo-doo. Not happy at all, Bob. Let's see. I don't know that Lexi would take offense. So now we're doing some speculation, some what if maybe. Oh, look at that. The day ended. I looked like I was having a little trouble working through the logic. Well, this was a big day. I made some pretty good progress, and I got to record part of it twice because I hit the mute button. So we are getting close to halfway done, and I can't remember if this is like virgin writing or if I'm still rewriting myself. But anyways, thanks again for watching. Day 20 is in the can. It's a wrap. We're not having a party, but we will when this whole thing is over, if it gets sold. And if it gets made, I'll have a big party, and you're invited. So like, subscribe, tell your friends, come back. I hope this is interesting. It's either going to be the biggest, coolest thing I've done on YouTube, or it's going to be like it's 4 views or something. But it's a great experience. As I've said before, highly recommend it. Hope you're learning something, or at least being semi-entertained. Don't know about that. Anyways, I've talked too long. I've said too much. I'll see you tomorrow, and thanks for sticking with me.